It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. We have so much today. I can't even believe it. It's been about 2 weeks, so it's not too surprising that I've got a lot to cover. We have a segment coming up on church money, a popular favorite with the listeners. Thank you so much for telling me about how much you liked the episode. This one's about Joel Olsteen, so that's going to be kind of fun. We have an interview with Kelley Laughlin, who does podcasts, YouTube videos with the atheist community of Austin, Truth Wanted, and the nonprofits, and a segment on private placement REITs and some of the problems that they have going forward. So that's going to be kind of fun. I also have a collection of little things here. One is an email from Vanguard talking about some of their cost structure, and they're raising some costs for transactions. As an example, if you have a broker at Vanguard help you make a transaction, it's $25. Certificate deposit fee is $100. And what is this? I don't know what that one is. Foreign securities deposit receipts dividend fee, a 1% on the gross dividend. That's new. And this one surprised me because I'd never known Vanguard to do this. Account closure and transfer fee. So if you have an account at Vanguard, a $100 processing fee may be charged for the account closure or transfer of account assets to another firm. Now, I know many other companies have started doing this, but Vanguard's the low-cost provider, right? So this is something that they've, I think, never done. I mean, if it was $50 before, I didn't know about it. I know it used to be $0, but it's now $100. So, they've got expenses that they've got to cover, and the investor is always the one that pays for everything. And so this is just another couple of things that they are doing that, cover their expenses, but also makes them kind of like everybody else. And it breaks my heart. They're still my favorite by a considerable stretch, but like anything, you have to keep an eye out. Another thing here, I guess this doesn't bother me too much, but for master limited partnerships, which I've talked about in the past, and I still very, very aggressively recommend that you do not use them. It says here, the tax filing fee for master limited partnerships held in an IRA will change from $300 to $500 per account. I don't know if that means per master limited partnership or per IRA, maybe per both. So it's just another reason to not have a master limited partnership because of the costs involved there. Other things in the news, just today as I'm recording this, the Fed has announced that they are not going to change up or down the overnight FOMC bank-to-bank overnight lending rate. Okay, cool. What does that mean? I don't know. It really just kind of depends on your take on things. It basically, the only thing I think it means is that they are not convinced that inflation is under control. The dual mandate that's often talked about with the Fed, they have two things that they're supposed to keep an eye on. One is to prevent inflation from getting out of control, and the other one is to try to make sure that there's enough jobs so that people that want jobs can get jobs. We can argue about whether they're good enough jobs, but there's jobs. And the jobs seem to be abundant, or at least growing. The number of people that have jobs or getting jobs has been strong or increasing. And inflation, which is down, has been kind of persistently stuck above 3%. And it's, again, one of those things that often comes up. People will hear that inflation is down or not as high, and then they'll point out that prices are still above what they used to be. So inflation is a measure of the increase in prices. So if inflation was 9% for a while and now it's 3 or 4%, the rate of increase is smaller than what the rate of increase was previously, but it's still an increase. The Fed's current goal, as they've stated, is to have inflation down below 2%. And generally, the philosophical perspective for the long run from most economists is that 2 to 3% inflation per year is kind of a sweet spot. If it goes a little higher, you want to try to reduce it. If it goes lower, you might want to stimulate the economy. Negative inflation or deflation is perceived to be as quite bad. Not really planned to talk on that too much this moment, so we're going to just go past that. But the other thing that kind of really shocked me in the news today, Tesla. I don't know if you guys have been following this. And well, first of all, more general thing. Somehow it just blows my mind. This narrative came up and everyone is sharing it and spreading it. The narrative is that EV sales are down. Okay, they're not. So stop. In the United States, at least, electric vehicle only, which are called BEVs, battery electric vehicles. So, straight up 100% electric vehicles, car sales in 2023 was 50% higher than it was in 2022. Okay, so just fact, right? Just these are the facts. The first quarter of the year was dramatically slower, and some car manufacturers, for the first time in years, experienced decreases in sales of some models. However, the overall increase annualized for the first quarter of 2024 was 18%. So what is down? And this is kind of like the inflation thing I was talking about a minute ago. We went from 50% increase in sales to 18% increase in sales. So the percentage of growth is smaller, but the number of units sold is not down. It's still up. Now, will at some point they plateau and fall? Maybe. Who knows? I mean, it's a complicated world and interest rates are higher because the Fed has raised interest rates, which makes buying new cars more expensive. Will cars come out from China? Will General Motors get its shit together and come out with the Equinox, which might be below $35,000? Will Volkswagen release the ID.4 in the United States, which is a very wildly popular car in Europe, and maybe be under $30,000? You know, if we have some $25,000 and $30,000 electric vehicles, that could make sales go up again by 50% or double in the next year or 2 or 3. So those things are possible. It just depends, you know, but the sales increases are still strong. The other thing that goes with that common meme of EV sales are falling, which they're not, the rate of increase has become smaller, is that all of a sudden hybrids are all the rage. Well, the funny thing is, depends on what they mean by the word hybrid. And I remember this being a really big thing almost 20 years ago. The very first hybrid that I bought was the Toyota Prius. And back then it did have a battery, but it also had a lot of other cool features that regular cars didn't have. And as their sales went up, other companies started putting in a few of those features and calling a regular version of their car a hybrid. And they might put in $500 worth of extra features to improve your range, or $1,000 and call it a hybrid and mark it up. And so there's no legal definition of what a hybrid is. Now, the next thing is you have two types of hybrids. You have a gasoline-only hybrid that just might be more efficient. It may or may not have a supplemental battery, or what I like to call a traction battery. That means a battery that can push your car forward, not just run the electronics and start the car as your conventional 12-volt battery. But you might also have a hybrid that does have a generous size battery, but it may or may not be able to plug in. If it can plug in, it's a PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So when someone talks about hybrid, they could mean a car with a couple bells and whistles that improve gas mileage. They could say hybrid and say something that improves gas mileage and has a battery that can store extra power when it's created and then use that battery to supplement when extra power is needed, but not from the gasoline powered engine. So you have a conventional car hybrid, you have a conventional car with a bigger battery or an additional battery, a hybrid, or you can have a plug-in hybrid that actually plugs in and you can charge the battery with electricity in addition to refilling the battery with the actual gasoline or diesel powered engine. So all of those use the word hybrid. So when they talk about hybrid sales are up, which kind are they talking about? It's not broken down that way. It's also become very popular for a lot of manufacturers to name cars hybrids again. And because it kind of got to be a little thing, so you could go to the dealership and they could say, well, you could get a hybrid without having to deal with all of the downsides of using an electric car. And there's some merit to that. And if they have a lot of the features, the car can get a whole lot further. We have, in addition to my Ioniq 6, my wife drives a RAV4 from Toyota, RAV4 Prime, which just took two of the old Prius batteries, the same battery, put two of them in. And so give or take 25 to 40 something miles of range on electric that you charged from home. So your charger can be very small. It could be a conventional wall outlet. It can charge overnight or for an entire day if you're not using it. And you hop in to do a few errands around your house. You drive 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 miles. All of it's on electricity. And of course, the perk for a plug-in hybrid electric is that once you get past the 40 miles of electricity, it mostly runs as a conventional gasoline car. Toyota specifically has avoided putting out electric cars, talking about the fact that they're going to have more hybrid cars, but then they didn't have more hybrid cars either. So now they're starting to do that, as have some other manufacturers. So if there's twice as many hybrids to choose from, hybrid sales go up just because more of the same cars selling are now more hybrid sales. So we'll see how that goes. I think we still go to an electric car future. And of course, if you are in the situation where you need a gasoline powered vehicle, go buy a fucking gasoline powered vehicle. It's cool, man. You don't have to hate on electric vehicles because that's not what fits your desires or goals or needs. Which reminds me, I've already recorded a segment and I will have that in the next show about my second trip from Orlando to Miami and back and how my car did and how long it took to charge and the pros and cons of some of that stuff. The last minute story here I want to talk about was specifically for Tesla. Of course, Elon is now apparently done playing with X and breaking everything there. He has set his new sights on apparently fucking up Tesla and has announced a 10% staff reduction. And staff reduction in any company are not nice. I have been involved with them. I have lost jobs in the past when companies or some of the overlords or executives just decide that you've got to go. And the reasons can be random, arbitrary, or even capricious. And I have experienced that where they just go, we've eliminated everyone with the job title that you have, regardless of how much value you might bring to the company. You're now unemployed. And it sounds like that kind of thing might have happened at Tesla. The problem is that they let off 10% of the staff, but there's other numbers floating around that it might be 15 or 20% eventually. So everyone that still has a job is now terrified that they may randomly lose their job, which is really uncool from a workforce perspective, from the employee perspective. Then the other shoe dropped, and apparently Elon stepped in and pretty much eliminated, and I've got mixed reports on this, on the stories that I've read, but basically eliminated 90 to 100% of the management and the staffing involved with running, setting up, installing, negotiating everything for EV charging locations. Fuck what? And this is the part that just blows my mind, because if Tesla doesn't want to come out with new model cars, which is a really poor strategy, they don't really want to update cars. They don't want to have 800 volt architecture except for in the Cybertruck, which sucks donkey dong, and that's a whole nother problem. But the one thing that they have is this really nice charging network. And if they ever stop making cars, if they never ever come out with another version or update a car or come out with a different variation of Tesla vehicles, they have the charging stations, which are going to be, we still think they're going to be, opened up to every other electric vehicle in North America, at least, to use the North American charging standard. And so all of these Tesla chargers can now charge a slightly higher rate for non-Tesla users, and they can make a lot of money charging cars. At least I think they could. And it's another stream of revenue and profit that would seem to be pretty solid and reliable. And you keep rolling out more and more locations. And as more and more cars go electric, and as long as everyone thinks that Tesla chargers are the place to go to, which they may not be, keep in mind. But as long as people think that they are and go there and pay for them, it's a way to have a really regular stream of revenue. So if you wanted to cut back that department, that's one thing. But basically destroying it is another thing, because that sends a shockwave of terror to everyone that is thinking about buying a Tesla or another EV. So keep in mind that there are many more locations of chargers that aren't Tesla than there are of Tesla. Tesla charging locations do tend to be bigger, and the total count of high-speed charging, or what Tesla calls the superchargers, they're really good at naming stuff sometimes. The supercharging network does have more towers than everyone else combined at this point in time, but everyone else is beefing up, and now Tesla has announced that they're pretty much going to stop. Elon then came out and said, no, we're not stopping. We're just scaling back, and we're going to try to make sure that our towers work 100% of the time, the ones that we currently have, which is kind of interesting, because one of the things of the ethos of Tesla is that their charging towers always work. So is Elon now going to spend time and effort and money fixing a problem that doesn't exist? Or is there actually a problem that people just generally don't know about? It's a lose-lose scenario. And of course, now he's talking about, well, we're still going to add new stations, but at a slower rate. Well, why would you do that at a slower rate when there's more and more electric cars hitting the market? And quite honestly, if I'm a Tesla driver, I'm going to be a little concerned, in part because Tesla drivers had a really cool, potentially unfair advantage. They could charge at almost any Tesla charging location and anywhere else. Other car drivers could charge anywhere else, but not at a Tesla tower. When Tesla gave up the rights to control the future of the North American Charging Standard, NACS, they did give away control of their own network a little bit. I think one could reasonably argue for the benefit of the industry. Absolutely. Otherwise, it was going to be the CCS standard, which is what my car hooks up to. But Tesla really wanted theirs to be the standard. It's now the standard. But to be the standard, you have to, well, I don't know if you have to. They gave up control of it, and it's now the North American standard, and it's now controlled and regulated by the governing bodies that make rules on what things can do electric-wise. I don't remember the names of the organization. Maybe I'll look them up for the next segment or something. But they set new standards, which are fantastic. So I'm all for it. Tesla was also going to roll out version 4, V4 superchargers. Apparently that's not going to be a thing now. So even though the Tesla Cybertruck can charge theoretically on an 800-volt architecture, it won't be able to do that at a Tesla supercharging station. So to really charge that car fast, you have to go somewhere not Tesla. So big surprise to me. That was the one part of the business I thought you can't cut that. It's just funds itself. So this puts companies like Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, and other organizations kind of back in control of their own destiny. And so the equipment going forward might have two cords, at least for a while. One plugs into CCS, one plugs into NACS, the North American Charging Standard. And if the only connector is the North American Charging Standard, okay, that means each driver just has to buy a $100 adapter. It's a physical adapter. It's like adapting from a two-prong to a three-prong outlet. A little more complicated, but not so much more. It's the communication between the car and the system that's important. And the nice thing is, and the reason everyone else can use version 3 chargers is that they use the Tesla protocol. And when Tesla started rolling out the version 3 chargers, they all come with that CCS protocol. So it's the same protocol we've been using. It's just a different physically shaped plug. And so once you have the right physical shape and the car and the charger talk, now it's getting that balance of amps and volts for a total of kilowatts and how fast the car can charge. Anyway, that's a lot of stuff going on. So we'll see what happens with Tesla. We'll see what happens with inflation. A lot of fun things. If there's anything particular about finance, economy, investing that you want me to talk about, send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. We're going to take a quick break and get on with the rest of the show.
When someone thanks God, I don't get offended. How many people thank God every time they say thank God? I don't get offended. Do I?
But you must be aware that a lot of people in America would potentially find that offensive.
What? Because I'm saying I don't believe in God?
Yeah, because you're kind of mocking them, you know.
No, I'm not. I'm not mocking them. People's beliefs aren't my concern at all. I certainly don't differentiate between religions either. I look at all religions the same. Unlike religious people, I look at all religions equally.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Another listener favorite segment on church money. Got this in an email from a listener. It's information on Joel, I can do it, right? Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church, which I guess is believed to be the biggest church in the United States of America. And of course, many people know Joel Osteen. And apparently the Houston Chronicle a few years ago, and yes, this is dated material, but I think it's still relevant. But the Houston Chronicle got their hands on a financial statement. And in the previous year, that church spent $90 million. It doesn't seem to have how much they made, but they spent $90 million. And it's a very crude breakdown, but I think it illustrates the point that I make and keep making and want to keep making, which of course reminds me, if you happen to come across a church budget, I don't care how big or how small the church is, but if you go to vote and you have to go into a church, that's your precinct to vote, which, by the way, I don't think that should be an option, but it is in a lot of places. If you have to go into a church to vote, if you have to go into a church unfortunately, for a funeral, or maybe on a happier note on a wedding. If you happen to be in one of these buildings, look around and see if there's a table set out where there's papers, and see if they have been forward enough with their membership to actually publish their budget. A lot of churches do this, and a lot of churches don't. But the ones that do sometimes put the budget out for display for anyone to pick up for several weeks, and maybe you can get one. But anyway, back to Joel Osteen's church, budget of around $90 million. Here's the budget items as broken down by the Houston Chronicle. Weekly services and programs, $31.7 million. Night of Hope events, $6.7 million. TV ministry, $25.1 million. General and administrative, $11.5 million. Fundraising, $11.9 million. Mission and outreach, $1.2 million. Now, it doesn't break down what mission and outreach includes, so the absolutely most generous position I could take is that half of that money goes to helping somebody, because it says mission and outreach. That means that's for proselytization. They're trying to get more members. And all of the things above are programs and or budget expenses. That there's not a category for feeding the poor, or a write-off even listed for housing people that during a terrible hurricane, because they don't do that kind of thing. But we're talking about less than $1 million, $500,000 out of $90 million that might, and probably what doesn't, go to helping the hungry, helping the homeless, helping the impoverished. Why is that? I mean, religion is so happy to get in our face today and tell us who to vote for, but it's also supposed to be part of the mission, right? To feed the homeless. Isn't there some kind of story about, if Jesus shows up at your house and knocks on your door, if you don't let him in, you're going straight to hell? Express train, high-speed rail, right? That's one of the things in the Bible, but it's one of the things that apparently in today's modern world is ignored. So every one of these churches that I've reviewed over the years, the amount of money that is documentable, or even in my wildest, most generous possible interpretation, 5% maybe, 3%, probably more likely is the highest, to anywhere to close to 0%, 1% goes to helping people in the area around that church. Churches have these kinds of programs, but they're often very, very, very feeble. I used to know a church very well that had a program where they would collect loose change to provide funds to a local homeless shelter and or food bank. And what happened one time is someone broke a window to the building and came in and then broke into this big display case that had all this money in it, because they were showing off to all the membership how much money all the members were giving. And so that visual display of a big glass container of cash was too much to resist for somebody, and that's unfortunate. But the money didn't go to the charity, and they ended the program. That was their reaction. Their reaction was not, hey, let's make this more discreet and not show off a big jar of money. But, if you are in a church and you want to defend your church, send me your budget. If you know of a church that actually does spend 10%, an ungodly large amount of money on helping poor people, send me your budget. And until then, and from the examples that I've seen, the idea that religious people and or churches or Christian churches, I've not seen anything from a different religion, and I'm welcome to review those as well. But churches just do not help people. That's not the main part of their program. That's not where their budget goes. That's not where the money goes. And all of this while these organizations primarily are avoiding taxes. They don't pay property tax. They don't pay income tax. They don't even pay sales tax for things that they buy for the church. All of this shit is tax-free. And a lot of the income that the employees make is also tax-free if they're, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, air quotes, called into the ministry, which doesn't necessarily limit this to ministers, by the way. And I was on a church school board, and most of the teachers were called and considered themselves ministers of the word, ministers of the gospel, and therefore their annual wages to teach third grade or fifth grade were not taxed at all. And this also helped justify the church underpaying these people. So it goes all around. They pay people less if they can. They don't pay taxes. They don't help the poor. It's just a big big shell game. The money's moving around. Most churches claim to be a religious organization, and while some churches might file a 501c3 charity, they often don't. And so the money goes in, the money goes out. It's a big black hole. So it's hard to figure out what's going on. But they're not paying taxes. They're not helping people, which is part of the ruse of not paying taxes because they're doing good for community. Well, they're not. So you can use this as support and send someone to my show if you so desire. Now, if someone tells you, well, one of the reasons I go to church or one of the reasons I donate to my church is they do a lot to help the poor. No, they don't. Whatever it is you're giving, you could probably give to a food bank, and maybe a couple of people from your congregation, if it's 500 people, if 4 or 5 of you got together and instead of donating your money to a church, donated it to a food bank, 5 people might be able to donate more money than the entire fucking church. That's how little of a church budget goes to helping the poor. So don't buy the bullshit when someone tells you that churches help people out a lot. There might be some exceptions. I'm still open to seeing them. But collectively, on a whole, and from the samples that I've seen, it's just not being done. So don't let anyone trick you with that. And if you happen to be a listener to this show and you're donating money to a church, maybe you should think about stopping doing that, because your money's not helping anybody. Well, it might be helping a couple of people at the top that are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to run the church. I know a lot of churches don't have money and don't pay pastors a lot, but if they can't afford to pay the pastor and the staff much money, I can promise you there's not much money left to go to charity either. So do not give money to a church, and do not buy into the lie that churches do a lot of help for people that are poor, hungry, and homeless. They don't.
Pace e lunga vita.
Lunga vita e prosperità.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. I'm going to go over one of the emails that I get here from people wanting me to sell shit to you. This one is from IPC, Alternative Real Estate Income Trust Incorporated, or for short, Alt-REIT. And it says here they're going to look at there's a video and I watched it. You can look at the 3 engines that are going to drive Alt-REIT's future growth and learn about their acquiring strategy, blah, blah, blah. The email comes from, or it has the logos for Inland Real Estate, Inland Securities, which is a really big real estate transaction company, a lot of commercial and industrial real estate. But the fund is being run and controlled by IPC, so it's like a marketing brand kind of thing. One of the things that I found interesting under the risk section, let's see, investing in our common, and it's hard to read because it's very small. Investing in our common stock involves a high degree of risk. You should purchase these securities only if you can afford the complete loss of your investment. I don't think I can ever afford the complete loss of my investment. So that's out. I mean, I don't have to go any further. I'm done. But I am going to go further because maybe you're still thinking it's a good idea. So I went and looked at their, what is this? Fact sheet, I think it is. Alt-REIT seeks to provide income and growth-focused investors access to a demographic-driven, recession-resilient real estate investment strategy. You know, I always hated big fucking words like that. It says a whole lot of things, but it doesn't really tell you anything. Below that, IPC, Alternative Real Estate Income Trust Incorporated, is a public, non-listed, monthly valued, perpetual life real estate investment trust focused on alternative sectors and designed to deliver stable, tax-advantaged distributions to investors. Wow, that's a lot. Our investment objectives strive to offer investors capital preservation, income generation, and appreciation. It almost sounds like the Spanish Inquisition from Monty Python. What is it? Our main weapon, I don't know, it sounds like Kermit the Frog. Our main weapon is capital preservation. Well, and income generation. No, our two main goals are capital preservation and income generation. Well, and appreciation. No, our three main goals. Okay, so that's your goals. Yay. Below that, of course, there is no assurance there is no assurance that will achieve our investment objectives. I'm assuming they meant to type we will, but there is no assurance that will achieve our investment objectives. Excellent. They're going to ask for up to $1 billion on this thing, and they can't have someone do a grammar check. If I find a grammar error, a writing error, you know it's bad. So then below that is all promotional stuff about Inland and how great Inland is as a real estate company, which is cool, but really has nothing to do with IPC other than some kind of marketing agreement. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, this sales and advertising literature is neither an offer to sell or a solicitation to an offer and is not for distribution to the public. So there. What are they going to do about it? I'm not giving you the pamphlet. I'm just reading from it out loud while the microphone is on. And of course, I'm speaking extemporaneously, just so you know. Here's another important factor. All of this real estate is owned by IPC, and you own shares in IPC. You do not own the real estate. You do not have the real estate in your name. So if IPC goes bankrupt, even if the real estate does well, they own it and you own shares of them. So you're investing in a company that is beyond my understanding. And here's the structure again. Public, non-listed, perpetual life REIT. I don't know. Public, non-listed. I can't reconcile that because a publicly traded company is listed, but I guess it doesn't have to be. I wouldn't buy anything that's not listed. I also wouldn't buy anything that felt it was appropriate or legally required to tell me I could lose 100% of my money. I guess that might apply to any and all stock, but that's why I don't buy individual stocks perhaps and stick with index funds. Let's see here. Maximum offering size, $1 billion. Minimum investment for the plebes is $2,500. If you have $1 million, you can get a different class of shares. Distribution frequency, intended to be paid monthly as authorized by Alt-REIT's board of directors. Okay. There's also some other context or comments here where they talk about they generally want to enroll you in an automatic dividend reinvestment program because then the money just goes right back to them And, it's funny because they get to set the price, by the way. So there's no public trading activity going on. So there's no market to set the price. They calculate the price. And this is a problem with any type of investment that does this. I'm going to lose 99% of my interest if I hadn't already from some other red flags that I've seen. But how do they get to control the price and what it is? They do, because those are the rules. What happens with a lot of REITs, and it may not happen with this one, but what happens with a lot of REITs is that they'll hold their price, and this one is $25.01. I don't know why 1 penny, but it is. They'll hold their price, but as they age, the net asset value, the calculated price that the organization itself makes, tends to go down. And so if you want your shares back, the most you could get is what they calculate the net asset value to be. So they can control the price, even though they're going to give you that price if you want your money back. So a whole lot in there that I don't like. Share repurchase plan. I'm going back to their document here. Shareholders may request on a monthly basis that we, IPC, repurchase all or any portion of their shares pursuant to our share repurchase plan. Shares not hold for at least 1 year will be repurchased at 95% of that month's transaction price. So they set the price, and if you decide you don't want these, the most you can get, if you decide you don't want these within a year, I guess, the most you can get is 95 cents on the dollar. And then they further add, and this is very common with private placement REITs, and yet another reason I would never invest in them. Overall share repurchase limit of 2% per month and 5% per calendar quarter, which a quarter would be 2 plus 2 plus 2, which would be 6%, but then they cap that further at 5% for the quarter. So if it's 2% and then 2%, then the next month it'll be 1%. I have not read the entire contract, and I'm not going to, but most of these things, what they'll do is they'll have something where if they'll look at everybody that's asked for their money back. If it's more than 2%, they might pick and choose based on who is the biggest owner, who is the smallest owner, or they prorate. So if 4%, people ask for 4% of the money back, they'll give everybody half because it's limited at 2%. And it makes kind of sense because they're buying real estate and they can't just turn around and buy and sell properties. But it's something I don't want to do with my investments. I want to know that within a very short period of time, I can get my money out. For most people, they'll be buying Class T shares. And if these prices are ever listed anywhere, on a website or a newspaper, they might list these prices. But again, it's not listed per se on a market. And it appears that the organization, like other REITs, they calculate the net asset value, NAV, on their own. And that might be published somewhere, but remember, they're still creating that price. If you buy Class T shares, the upfront commission is 3%. The upfront dealer manager fee is 0.5%. And the ongoing distribution fee is 0.85%. So I'm guessing you lose 3.5% of your money just to get in. You lose another 5% if you decide to get out. They're going to charge you ongoing distribution fee of 0.85%, which means you are going to pay them 0.85% per year to help offset their costs of sending people like me this brochure and information. So you're losing almost 1% of your investment every year to promote this product to other people. Not interested. I mean, if it can't stand on its own, right? But we're only just getting started. Next is the management fees. 1.25% of the operating partnership attributed to outstanding Class T, which is the one I was talking about, payable monthly. So there's an additional 1.25. So you're looking at 3.5% to get in, 5% to get out, 0.85 and another 1.25. So that's 2.1% ongoing as fees. And keep in mind, like a lot of other investments, these are the things that fit into these categories. This doesn't mean that this includes everything. So they're going to have expenses outside of management. It might be for maintenance of the properties or the buildings. So, that's part of the ongoing business. You're buying shares in a business. You're not buying the actual real estate. You're buying a company that invests in real estate, a public but non-listed company, whatever that is. So keep all of that in mind, that you have all of these things. And of course, below that, there's a lot of fine print, which I thought maybe I'd read some of it, but now I'm losing interest. I'm sure you've lost interest by now. So they have one more thing here. Performance allocation, 12.5% of the annual total return, subject to a 5% annual hurdle amount and a high water mark with a catch-up. Okay. I'd have to really dig in to see what those things are. They all sound technical, but also kind of weaselly words. My guess would be performance allocation to 12.5% of the annual total return. So if they make money, only 12.5% will be allocated as a performance allocation. And then subject to a 5% annual hurdle amount. I'm guessing that if they don't make at least 5%, they're going to distribute nothing. And a high watermark. I don't know what that means in this context. Given my experience in the industry, I'm assuming that if they make a whole lot of money, they still don't have to give you 12.5% of it. And then it has with a catch-up. I'm guessing that means if there's a year or two where they don't pay anything, they can pay more later if they wish. So basically, it's whatever number they calculate. Again, not too interested in it. So I'm just going to wrap that up. But that's another example of a private placement REIT. Oh, I'll say it just because I'll add it in here, that they focus on storage units, medical, and senior housing. And they think those are the three categories that are going to win. And even if they do win, I'm guessing that the expenses that this company has and the goal for profit margin and how the executives get paid and how much it costs to buy and sell and manage all these properties, that they're probably not going to make a lot of money. I don't know. I have no idea. There's no way for me to check because they control the price. I can't see the inside books. All of these things are things that tell me I'm not interested. So I thought you might like that information on a new, yet again, Phil is unimpressed by another private placement REIT.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Now, notice a lot of people believe in God, yet nobody believes in magic. I find that interesting. Aren't they kind of similar? You believe in magic, people call you an idiot. You're like, well, what if the whole water and the wine thing? That was kind of like magic. And they always say, yeah, but shut up. I like magic. I have way more respect for magic than I do for religion. At least magicians back it up. Can you imagine if magicians did what priests did? Besides that, it'd be so much less fun. Magicians are like, all right, now to pull a rabbit out of a hat. And you're like, I don't see a rabbit. You got to believe there's a rabbit. Sorry, man, I just don't see it. Well, you're going to hell. That's religion.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. Welcome back, everybody. As promised, a special guest for today is Kelley Laughlin. Kelley is a regular host or co-host on Truth Wanted. And what was the other one, Kelley? You just told me.
The nonprofits.
Yes, the nonprofits. Both are shows as part of the atheist community of Austin. And Kelley, hopefully you understand my joke. You've had a rocky past.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Why don't you give us a little history there and what you're doing now?
I never called myself a geologist until about 5 years ago when I had a bunch of other geologists tell me I was, because I do not have a degree. I went and got a degree in English. But I have been working in the field of geology for over 40 years, and I've actually authored 7 papers now that have been published. So I guess you can call me a geologist.
What would a paper be beyond "here is a rock"?
That's basically what it is. And just about every paper I have written has been about a new discovery of a particular mineral. So I got kind of famous for a little bit because I identified all the minerals in a rock that was being marketed as Uperlights that glow in a UV light. And I was even on TV in Japan. It was crazy. But that's basically what it is. We got this rock and we did a bunch of testing on it. We tested it like 3 different ways to make sure that we knew exactly what the minerals were in it. We wrote up a paper about what minerals were in it, where it was found at, what the range was where you would be able to find this, and other other locations throughout the world where you might be able to find this mineral. So that's the kind of paper I would write.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have fun doing it. So do what, if you have a passion for something, do what you love, right?
Absolutely. That is one of those areas that I find fascinating, but I guess never fascinating enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's so many things that I have interest in. It actually caused me serious problems in university because when it came time to choose a degree, they're like, "What do you like?" And I go, "I like everything. I like learning. I like learning about stuff." So I could have done geology. I think I could have done paleontology. I could have done, astrophysics. Well, maybe not because the math was really hard.
Yeah, I'm not good at math.
I'm pretty good at basic math, but it's funny. And a little side story about me. When I got to college, my first calculus class, I had calculus in high school. So my first calculus class kicked my ass. I think I got like a D+.
Mm-hmm.
The second calculus class, I got a C+. So, I was doing better. The third calculus class almost got an A. It was multidimensional calculus. And so it had to do with the basics of calculus applied to space and planes and spheres and objects and shapes and surfaces. And I am really good at visualizing or understanding a surface or a shape or a description. And a lot of people that were kicking my ass or embarrassing me in the first 2 calculus classes definitely had the calculus skills. They just couldn't figure out how to apply it to a shape. So that was kind of like my revenge. I was like, yay, I'm mediocre at best in calculus, but in spatial orientation, I rule. So.
Well, I decided to be an English major because I wanted something to fall back on in case I couldn't make it as a short order cook.
Oh, yeah. You got to have goals, man. You got to have goals. Well, I know one of the things that you kind of like to talk about are healing crystals. So talk to me, if I've got this, I got the sciatica thing. What's the right crystal for that?
Well, you know what? I hate to tell you, Phil, there's no crystal that's going to help you with that. I really, honestly, I really wish there was. And I have always said that if crystals could heal people, one of 2 things would be happening right now today in the United States. Either every mother would have a $10 kit inside the medicine cabinet so she could fix her kids with it, or it would cost $100 and come in a box marked Pfizer.
Yeah, exactly. I love it when people talk about vitamins and how well vitamins work, and it's not part of big pharma. And they may be wrong on both accounts because most vitamins are now sold by large pharmaceutical companies because they can make a lot of money and they don't even have to do the testing that's required for actual medicine.
Yeah, I couldn't believe the amount of money that was spent on herbal supplements in the United States. It's crazy and amazing. And there is, with a lot of it, there just isn't any proof at all. It's just people's hopes. And that's what I get with crystal energy too. It's people hoping for something. They have some kind of problem like chronic back pain, sciatica. There's something that they've been through all kinds of experts to. They've been to the orthopedic, they've been to the pain clinic, and they still haven't gotten relief, and they're willing to do anything, and that's why I think people are able to still pull the wool over these other people's eyes because they're desperate.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the person selling the stuff might legitimately, truly, earnestly believe what they're promoting and what they're selling. Because I know a lot of times, even in my industry, I've run into people that sell annuities, and they truly do believe with all their heart and their pathetic, limited understanding of mathematics that it's a really good investment. I'm the kind of guy that rips it apart and can show people mathematically it's a horrible thing to use. But anyway, so talk about these shows that you're on and when people can see you. When are they on? How do they get them? What do you talk about?
Well, Truth Wanted is it's on Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. I am one of 4 hosts. We revolve around, so I'm not on it every week. But we talk to people about what they believe and why. And we want to talk to you about any belief. Do you want to talk to us about aliens? Awesome. Conspiracy theories, ghosts, paranormal, anything you want to talk about, religion, we want to talk to you about it. So we encourage people to call in so we can have a conversation. And I don't know if you're familiar with street epistemology.
I am. I know it very well.
Well, we try to be more like a street epistemologist and have a good conversation, a good neutral type conversation with the person instead of getting into something confrontational.
Absolutely. And I know because you were there, that I was recently on Truth Wanted. And, that's not always my best skill. That's not my strongest skill. I can sometimes be a little too reactive when someone says something that I think is just off kilter.
What was really good practice for me to get there, and this isn't going to work for you, but I can explain how I got there, is that I now have a retail store that I operate with my son, and we sell mineral specimens, rocks, crystals, gemstones, and people will come in and start talking to me about all these healing powers of the rocks, and I want to have a conversation with them. But I still have to pay my bills, and I still have to get them to buy something from me. So I can't piss them off, but I can have a very good conversation. And that's how I learned to not be so confrontational. So,
well, what you need to do is have in reserve, like, for example, if someone is coming in and talking about pink quartz, right? Mm-hmm. And they're telling you that they think it can heal their asthma. And you go, oh, you know what? Hang on a second. You open a little secret cabinet and you pull out a pink quartz that you just didn't have space to put out. And you tell them that this one has had the crystals aligned inside of the quartz. And yes, it is twice as expensive, but this will work better for you than regular pink quartz.
That is very common in this industry, unfortunately. There are not a whole lot of old-fashioned rock shops like we saw pre-1980s before the whole crystal energy fad started. And most of them today are magic stores, and they unfortunately are way overpriced for the most part. I have had dealers come to, like people who own stores like this, come to me at trade shows where we're selling at retail, and they're buying stuff from us to resell in their stores. And I never could figure out how they stayed in business, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I think, we're talking about these desperate people who are looking for some kind of relief, and they don't know the whole rock and mineral business. So they're just coming to find some relief from that. Somebody told them, hey, you might want to try this crystal thing.
I was just reminded of, I think it's Whole Foods. I don't know if they've changed, but my son and I went into a Whole Foods, and I was sick. I had a terrible cough, fever, headache, a whole bunch of things. And he and I went in and we found the homeopathy section which was like 20 linear feet of shelf space. And we were taking pictures and yucking it up really, really good. And someone came over in a lab coat and asked if we needed any help. And I said, no, I'm sorry. I honestly, I just need, like a Tylenol and a Robitussin or something like that. And they said, we don't sell that kind of stuff here. I'm like, what do you mean? And she takes me over to, some naturopathic cough medicine and a natural based headache thing. And I'm like, that's cool and all. I just want, like actual medicine. And they're like, this is actual medicine. And again, because I have such a short fuse for the insanity of it all, we get to a point where just a couple of minutes later, my son is pulling my arm and going, Dad, it's now time for us to leave this store.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good for anybody. So, we left and walked across the parking lot to a CVS or something and bought conventional medicine.
I'm curious now what she was showing you, because I know a lot of, this is something I was recently went through with, because I broke my back when I was younger. I do have a lot of back pain. And a friend of mine was telling me about an herb that grows in the woods around me called ghost pipe, and how it was better than opium. It was such a great painkiller. So I went and did some research into it, and it just has salicylic acid, aspirin in it.
Yeah.
So, and it's a long process to prepare it to take it. And I was like, I'd rather just go get a couple of aspirin. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And of course you have a regulated, monitored, controlled, filtered, diluted, precise amount of the medicine. So
yeah, and I can appreciate that as a scientist. So
I don't know why, but in the past, like aspirin and or Tylenol might kind of sort of work for me, but for aches and stuff, my go-to is Aleve. Totally different reaction for me, and I get that we're all humans are a little different. But I was once having a conversation with a doctor, and I had some pain. I don't remember what it was. And he said, okay, well, for the next 2 weeks only, you can take 2 Aleve every 12 hours instead of the regular 1. And I said, well, I have found that after about 8 hours, the effectiveness goes away because of the half-life decay of the medicine and the fact that you're passing it through your body, that I would be perfectly fine taking 1 every 8 hours. And he goes, oh, no, you can't do that. That's too much.
That was less than...
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Apparently your doctor is not good at doing basic medicine.
Yeah. I was like, let me back up a minute. You just told me I could take 2 every 12 hours. And I told you that I would be okay taking 1 every 8 hours, which would be, as you quickly deduced, 3 pills a day instead of 4. And he's like, but that's contraindication. That's not how you're supposed to take it. And I go, I know, but I'm telling you, it doesn't last 12 hours for me. It lasts about 8. And so the problem I have is that 4 hours between the next dose. So why take 2 when I could just take 1 every 8 hours? So we had to do some basic math, as you said. And he finally was like, oh yeah, I guess that is less total medicine. So yeah.
Yes.
Science is fun.
It can be. I love science. I really do. I really, really, really love science. And it hurts me to see some of the pseudo, like TikTok is just I don't know. I don't want to say anything really negative, but it's just a wash with pseudoscience and pseudo history. And it's really saddening to me that there's so many people out there spreading so much misinformation and so many people are believing it.
Well, the thing I like to say is the nice thing about the internet is you can find any information you want. The bad thing about the internet is that you can find any information that you want.
Yes, exactly.
So it used to be, it used to be where if you had a crazy idea about a politician, and I know on your shows you don't get political, but I sure as fuck do. But if you, if you say something painfully stupid to a group of people at the office or at work, they'll just laugh in your face, and you quickly learn that was a stupid thing to say. Unfortunately, with the internet, I can say the most bizarre wackadoodle thing as long as I find a group of 30 people somewhere else that believe in the same nut thing that I do, and they'll just reinforce and prop up your belief system, no matter how crazy it is. And so now you get this belief that and you're kind of inoculated from negative public reaction because you know you have your group that supports you. But the one that really, and I know you're a fan of it too, that just escapes me. It just defies my understanding how this is even a thing. Religion. I just can't. People actually believe this stuff. It blows my mind. What am I out of line? What are your thoughts here on this one?
I was raised in a religion. Well, I was raised in a fairly religious house, but my parents made sure I was at Sunday school every week and went to church every Sunday. We didn't rule our household through religion, but it was definitely there. But by the time I was 14, I had realized it was bullshit. And I've even said this, like, God never comes when you call him. You can't test God, right? Christians will tell you that. So I thought this was my 14-year-old logic thinking, well, if I can't test God, I could test Satan. Yeah. Right. So I started calling every night before I went to bed. I started asking Satan to show up to me, and then that I would sign that contract with him and sell him my soul. And I did that for 30 days, and he never showed up. And I just kind of dropped the whole idea of Christianity behind me at that point. Oh,
well, I do a couple of things. One is that sometimes, not always, I'll leave a couple of dollars on the nightstand next to the bed because I like efficiency. So I cut out the middleman of church, So if Jesus is short a few bucks, and since he's everywhere all the time, it's right there, right? If Jesus can take the wheel, he can take my 20, right? So it's just there on the counter. The other thing that I have as a standing permission, I have granted Jesus permission to come into my house at any time when I'm recording, anytime at all, actually. But when I'm recording, if I make any misstatement about his existence, he has my explicit permission to jump in and use this open microphone to correct what I'm saying. And so far,
nothing, huh?
Yeah, nothing. A whole lot of no, nothing. Still nothing. So Jesus is very shy. He's better than Waldo at playing this hiding game.
You would think that he'd want to show up too, because it would convince so many people.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a dark booming voice on my podcast all of a sudden, that'd be at least something. But
something anyway. Yeah, it might not be proof, but it'd be pretty good evidence, right?
No, I do know you have a note here from our pre-show. You mentioned cryptids.
Yes.
What is this?
Cryptids are cryptozoology is like the study of animals that people think might exist. It's something that I was kind of interested in me. You were talking about things like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, chupacabras. My favorite cryptids are phantom kangaroos. Phil, I don't know how old you are. I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I know you lived there for a while.
Yeah, I grew up in that area. Yeah, we're probably
in the 1970s. There was a rash of kangaroo sightings around the city of Chicago. Were you around for that?
No, I completely oblivious to this phenomenon, but
and that's kind of what got me interested in it. I'm a young teenager, and then there's these kangaroo sightings all over the city of Chicago. And 2 Chicago police actually said they wrestled with it, and they almost had it in handcuffs at one point. And then it knocked both of them over and got away.
Wow, that's tripping.
Yeah, it was a really crazy story. So I kind of got interested in it, and then from there I found Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, which we now know for sure does not exist because of environmental DNA studies of the loch.
Ah, well, I do remember growing up, and it was probably late 70s, early 80s. There was a show on TV that would come up. It was a very early prototype of what is now the Science Channel, unfortunately. Not saying it's aliens. And they would talk about all this weird stuff, and the voiceovers were done by Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, In Search of.
Yes. And of course, I was even then this ginormous Star Trek fan, and part of me was like, this is Spock, motherfuckers, right? I wouldn't have said that when I was that age, but this is Spock. There's got to be something to it.
Right?
Because, and of course, that's probably why they hired him, right? Because
I mean, he was the science officer.
Yeah.
It's got to be real, right?
I mean, who else is a more credible source in the late 70s or early 80s as a intergalactic scientist and the most robust thinker and rational, logical guy? And so in search of, and I was convinced that you could do things like sharpening razor blades by putting them inside of a pyramid overnight.
Oh, the pyramid thing, yeah.
Yeah, pyramid power. Oh,
Yeah. I remember that.
And it was
that
all
was a big fad for a while.
it was all crap. And then, it probably was a couple years. I had to be, like I said, around 10 or 12 or something, because when I was 13, I was in United Methodist confirmation class. And I also remember once a week at the exact same time, they were both concurrent in time, I was watching each new episode of Carl Sagan's Cosmos on a 9-inch black and white TV.
Oh.
Because the big 19-inch black and white TV, because my parents didn't have a ton of money and they were, budget conscious. At this time, the big black and white TV was Love Boat and Fantasy Island, and I'm watching Cosmos in the master bedroom on the portable TV, 9-inch black and white.
On WTTW in Chicago.
Yep. And I kept thinking, wow, every episode is more fascinating, and every time we learn new stuff, our total knowledge of how the universe and how all these subsections, it just gets better. But every time I learn something new about religion, it gets stupider. And you find out
It does seem it just does defy logic, doesn't it?
And it's like, all of you guys, just Christianity for a minute, because that's my field of expertise. I don't know, 10, 20, 30,000 different types of Christianity, depending on how you slice it. You guys all figure it out and then come argue with me, because but the other problem is I have met so many people, and some of the worst are the really, really intelligent people, and they create what I call a religion of one, where their religion isn't really, it's not Seventh-day Adventist, it's not Methodist, it's not Catholic, it's not even necessarily saved by grace or saved by blood or saved by birth. It's their own unique version of Christianity. And you're like, where did you, how is, yeah, what,
I think that's a really important group of people too in studies when they do polls about religion in America.
Yeah.
And one of the things that atheists have gotten really excited about is the amount of nuns, people with no affiliation, that has risen like 20% in the last, up to 26% in the last few decades.
Right.
And you have no religious affiliation, and those people that you're talking about that make those religions of one, they fall into that category.
Yeah.
And when they take those polls, that's them too. So all that 26% aren't atheists.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of atheists and people who label themselves as agnostics get a little too excited about seeing that numbers. And unfortunately, the actual number of actual atheists in the United States is about 6%.
Yeah. Well, which is way up from 2%, mind you.
Yes, it is. We have made a lot of strides. And I think as Europe becomes more secular, because Europe has always been 50 years ahead of us, haven't they?
Yeah, a few years, at least.
I keep my fingers crossed that we're going to get there soon.
Yeah, it's funny because the other thing I'm going to talk about in this show at some point is recently with Tesla and some of their announcements, but it's people who are, I don't know, for lack of a more polite word, Tesla fanboys. They talk about Tesla and how they still have 50% market share. And I said, 50% market share in the U.S., but in Europe and Asia, they're just getting crushed. But I don't want to belabor that too much here yet again. But there's a case where Europe is ahead of us again. The social support, benefits, and services, and just the weird fluke of reality that the United States happened to develop a system where healthcare is from your employer. Well, that's stupid, because if you ever switch jobs, you're at risk of losing your health care.
Yeah.
And so it's another way the man can control you. And if you are a believer in the free exercise of businesses and consumerism and capitalism, not only should companies be able to do what they want to, the employees should be able to leave from one job and go to another one that pays more simply by snapping their fingers and they move from one job to another. But if you lose your insurance, now you can't. So you as the employee are again captured by the company.
It was really hard back in those days when you were self-employed too.
It's hard now, my friend, because for my wife and myself only, the two of us, now I have chosen a more expensive plan on purpose because it is, to be fair, tax deductible as the employer. But I spend almost $3,000 a month on my healthcare premiums.
Wow.
Now
That's too much.
I could get a much cheaper plan, but then the payments and the bills and the co-insurance and all that stuff.
Right. Then you don't get as good a coverage, right?
Yeah. Well, those payments aren't deductible. And so, but yeah, when I talk to people in other countries and tell them that I pay $36,000 a year just for the insurance, they're like, a lot of people in our country don't make that much money. And I go, yeah, see, that's why it's a problem.
Yeah, totally.
That's
totally.
why it's a problem. Well, what else, Kelley, have we not covered that you want to cover today?
I don't know, Phil. I mean, we covered a lot of stuff. I had a great time. I really did.
Well, you're very kind.
I am so happy that you asked me to do this. I have always enjoyed talking to you. I had a great time when you were on Truth Wanted last time. I was back up post that night, and I always have a good time watching, listening to you, and hanging out with you. So
you're very kind.
really happy to be here today.
You mentioned you have a store. I think you've also said to me that it's an online store.
I do. We do have a website. It's kelleysKaleidoscope.com. And we have a rock shop in Norway, Michigan called Kelley's Rock Shop. So
excellent. So they should be able to Google that Kelley, right?
Yes, EY. Yeah. My parents wanted to trip everybody up.
Okay.
But if you Google it, I'm sure it'll find me anyway without the second E. So.
And people could browse the website and maybe buy some pink quartz or something.
Sure. When I first made the website, there was another Kelley's Rock Shop with only one E. So I did the kaleidoscope thing because my ex-wife and I had a store in a college town where we sold a bunch of hippie stuff and called it Kelley's Kaleidoscope. And her name was Kelley, too. So I just kind of named it that and went with that. Now Kelley's Rock Shop, the other website's gone, and I'm stuck with Kaleidoscope. So
that's all right. Well, Kelley Laughlin, thank you so much for coming on the Phil Ferguson Show. I greatly appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Phil. I appreciate it.
Well, everybody, it happened once again. Here I was thinking, oh my gosh, how will I have enough stuff to put in this week's show? Will it be only 20 or 30 minutes? And no, lo and behold, it is 80 to 90 minutes. I haven't mixed it together yet, but you don't know that. Absolutely fantastic time making this week's show. We talked about Joel Olsteen. We talked about REITs. We talked about Tesla. We talked about the Fed, multiple other things. We had a fantastic interview with my friend Kelley Laughlin. And you can go check out his store online. What did he say? It was Kelley's Kaleidoscope. Maybe you can go buy some cool rocks from Kelley. So that's pretty neat. Kelley. And I'm keeping the closing remarks short because the show was considerably longer than I expected. But you know what? I had fun with it. Hopefully you enjoy it. If there's anything you want me to talk about or any questions you have, send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and maybe we can get one of those topics on the show. Otherwise, I will see you out there on the road sometime soon. I am going to BajaCon in Canada in a couple of months. I will be going to the Center for Inquiry's SciCon from the Center for Inquiry, Center for Skeptical Inquiry. I hate their naming conventions, and I've told them this, but I don't run the place. So CFI is having its annual conference in Vegas, SciCon. My wife and I are already booked for that. We're going to do that. We're doing the FFRF convention this fall. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. We're going on the Center for Art and Inquiry cruise in June. So I might have a gap of 2 or 3 weeks there where I don't put out a show, because I'll be on a cruise through Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland. Gonna have so much fun. Hopefully, the thing I'm looking forward to most, of course, being in Iceland sounds really cool, but I'm going to Blarney Castle. That's not part of the cruise. We're going to Ireland a couple days early. We're also going to take a day tour to see where they make Guinness. I think that's a beer. Yeah, Guinness beer. That's what it's called. And some Scotch place. The name escapes me. If you're into Scotch, you're screaming. You're screaming now at me. I'm so sorry. But we're going to go. We're going to have fun. We'll do tasting, sampling. I'll sample the Scotch, but I will not be sampling the beer. I loathe beer. I know that makes some of you cry, but whatever. I got all kinds of taste issues. But I'm going to go because it sounds like a lot of fun, and I've never been, and we're going to enjoy it. So anyway, going to wrap up. If you go to any one of those conferences, or you happen to be on the streets of Ireland when I'm there, or Iceland, or Scotland, please feel free to come up and say hello. Until then, ciao.